Hello, my beautiful friends. I am Laurel Bleadon-Maffei with Illuminating Souls, welcoming you to this episode of Sleepy Bedtime Blessings, a podcast designed to help you rest, relax, and fall asleep, all while deepening in your connection with your beautiful team of angels who love you so. If we're meeting for the first time, I am an angelic practitioner, a spiritual teacher, and an encourager of souls. And I do this through one-on-one angel sessions, soul mentoring, and a variety of classes designed to inspire your spirit. And you can learn more at my website, illuminatingsouls.com, where you can also sign up for my mailing list. So if you visit my website, there are 2 different places you can sign up for my mailing list. At the very top of the homepage, you can sign up for my regular list, and you'll receive class announcements, opportunities for angel readings, and just general information. Further down on the page, you can sign up for the daily inspiration email blast, and you'll receive an inspiring email from me every weekday. Also on the home page, you will see a place where you can learn more about my Earth Angels Oracle deck. I don't know about you, but I love a good oracle deck, and I was blessed to create this one, and I'm delighted to share it with you. There are 70 beautiful, loving, angelically infused cards for you, and all the ordering information is on my website. But for now, the angels and I are here to co-create a light-filled, loving sanctuary where you can rest and replenish and connect with the love of your angels. Yes, you have angels. We all do. I believe this universe is infused with love for every molecule of life, including us. And this is not the kind of love that you have to earn or be worthy of. It's not performance-based love. It is a life force. It is a presence. Just like sunlight exists, this loving presence, essence exists for all of us, for all living things. It's just on the human journey, we go through this portal of amnesia when we are born, and then quite often life trains us out of our innate understanding that this love exists, and we get trained out of it through social messaging, religious training, life, all that life stuff that happens to us. But it doesn't mean that this loving presence and this loving essence ever diminishes. Only our awareness of it diminishes. And one of the most profound experiences of my life was when I reawakened to this truth. And I think I've shared this maybe on 1 or 2 episodes before, but you might not remember it. So perhaps I can share with you the moment when this wellspring of love was reawakened for me. It was in a dream, a visitation. So different than just the regular dreams that you forget as soon as you wake up. It was an experience that I still can remember and feel into all of these years later. It happened in early 2000, and I woke up in the dream to this beautiful I'm going to say boy, but it was a man. But, I use the word girl all the time for me to speak of myself, right? So I don't mean a child. He was a guy. In my consciousness, what I heard in the dream was he was the most beautiful boy I've ever seen. And he was floating above my bed, which might sound creepy, but in the dream it wasn't creepy at all. It felt like home. And as soon as I saw him, I knew I loved everything that he was. This wasn't a crush. I don't mean that kind of love. I mean soul love. The totality of all that he is, I loved. And more remarkably so, I knew that he loved me in the same way. That everything that I was, he loved. It truly was one of the most remarkable experiences of my life. When people have near-death experiences, they talk about this kind of love. They come into the light and everything is love, and that is what I experienced. And up until that point, I had been so hard on myself. And one of my life struggles was learning to love myself and to experience this love was so beyond what I had ever known on the earth plane. And I threw my arms around him and I began to sob. And I said, I miss you. Where are you? Why aren't you here with me? And he said, you decided to do this one alone. And I said, I changed my mind. Come back. And he said, I need to show you something. And he took me by my hand, and I was living in an apartment at the time in real life, and I had mirrored doors on my closet. And so he took me to the mirrored doors and he pointed to my reflection. And he said, this is not who you are. You are so much more than this. And all I could see was all my flaws and my shortcomings, and I was a middle-aged, overweight woman. That's the mirror that I saw myself in. And I was still crying. I said, I don't understand. And he said it again. He pointed to my reflection and he said, this is not who you are. You are so much more than this. And he took me by my hand and he led me into a portal. The mirrors on my closet had become a portal, like in Stargate SG-1. And he led me into the portal and he showed me several lifetimes where we had lifetimes together and we served as healers. And these were beautiful reflections. And then I woke up in my bed alone. And I just started sobbing because I was so lonely and I missed him, and what was this all? And if this were a movie, my life would start changing immediately, but it's real life, and that's not what happened. I remember bringing this dream to my therapist. I don't even remember what she said about it. But I wanted to come back to that love again. And I call the year 2000 the year of my awakening because that experience in that visitation in some ways was a catalyst for everything that would come that year. Ultimately, that would be the year that I found my way to the University of Santa Monica. So many things happened. I have a podcast episode called The Story of My Awakening, where I go into it in more detail. But I spent years learning, understanding this expression of divine love that is without limits, that there's no polarity to it. It simply exists. And I no longer feel homesick when I think of that dream. I think my life reflects this kind of loving. I don't mean just through human beings. I have a beautiful relationship with my husband and with friends and family. But I mean this presence of the angels and of God that I get to be with every day. That the homesickness, that visitation fueled in me in the beginning has now been sated. Another moment I'll share with you was that sense of homesickness that I had for several years. And when I say homesick, I mean for home over there. Yes, not physical world home. And I was crying in the shower, which I was doing quite a lot back then as a form of release and catharsis. And I remember exactly what was happening. I was opening the shower door and reaching for my towel, which was hung next to the shower. And it was in that moment I felt the angels come to me. And they said, the problem is that you have it wired that your life here cannot feel like home. And what we recommend is to ask God to help you create a life here that feels like home. And that you don't know what that'll feel like or look like, but God knows. And in the moment I received that download, that prayer moved through me. God, help me create a life here that feels like home. And I don't know what that will look like or feel like, but you know. And it was like something cracked open. Not that I automatically felt like I had a life that feels like home. Again, that's the genie giving you 3 wishes kind of truth. But rather the possibility of that was possible. What would that even be? I didn't know, but that maybe it could happen. Something opened in me. Like my perception of my potential reality shifted. And it would take several years, but I feel now that I live a life that feels like home. I don't feel like this is the same vibration as my spirit home, if you will, but I don't get homesick. I love my life here. My life here is profoundly fulfilling, filled with love and goodness. And yes, I'm a human being and I get frustrated and upset and tired, and it's not perfect, but I love this life. I love this opportunity to be incarnated in this time and place for this linear lifetime. It is a precious lifetime for me. And I'm so grateful to be here for as long as God wants me here or needs me here, however you wire that. So when I talk about love, letting in the love of your angels, and I say that this is bigger than the sun, it is unconditional. This is the love I reference. It's not a Hallmark card kind of love. It is at the very essence of all that we are. It is a building block of this universe of consciousness. And it exists. It exists for you. It exists as you. And my hope is that these podcast episodes give you a taste of it, or more than a taste, an infusion of it. And over time, you too are building your own foundational relationship with this loving essence. Because it is here, always, with you. And so, my beautiful friends, I invite you to take a nice deep breath in and just release and just affirm. Imagine, allow it to be so that this love is flowing to you. It is with you in every breath. And I'm going to invite the angels to be here. They are already here, but I love sharing this ritual with you. So beautiful angels on high, I know you are here and I invite you to join us here. I ask that you infuse this broadcast with waves of love, compassion, healing, and understanding in service to each of our beloveds listening to this message. Angels help to bring to us the vibration of divine home here on earth, so that each one of us knows that we are a beloved of God, of the universe. That each one of our beautiful ones listening, they are precious in this world. So dear ones, just take some nice deep breaths in and know that you are filled with magic and love. You are a bright light in this world. This doesn't mean you have to do something. It's your beingness. It's your beingness. It is the greater expanse of all that you are. You are here bringing light into this world. You are a source of love. You are a source of kindness. And this might show up in you in a lot of different ways. Perhaps you're a fierce advocate. Perhaps you are a counselor to all of your friends. Maybe you rescue animals. Or maybe you are that wonderful person who allows people to gracefully merge into traffic on the freeway. However kindness and light move through you, you are a blessing. I think sometimes our ego gets puffed up that our light and the blessings we bring into this world need to really be profound. But if we're talking molecules of goodness, saying thank you to the cashier at the supermarket, asking them how their day is, can be a really lovely thing. You're a lovely person. In the words of my father, Jack Bleadon, he would say, "You're good people." So thank you for being good people, for being one of the good ones, one of the helpers, one of the kind ones. I'm so grateful to know you, even if we have never met. It comforts my heart to know that you are here on the planet and we are here together, shining, doing our best, doing and being good, kind people. It's a tough order these days, right? I don't know about you, but I get kind of cranky sometimes. And I over people. So I am not always kind. I'm not a mean person. I'm just saying I am not always sunshine and roses. I know that might surprise you. But we're doing the best we can. Right? We're divine beings having a human experience. And sometimes we are very, very human. And that's okay too. You be you. You be you. Because you're a unique, glorious expression of God that is you. So my beautiful friend, if you're preparing for bed, I invite you to cozy on up and snuggle on in. Give your worries to the angels. Send your prayers to them. Let them lift you up into brighter energies as you sleep to help you replenish and restore. And while you rest, we're going to go into story time. And for story time, we have another TV Guide episode. Many of you tell me these are your favorite episodes. And I have been holding on to this particular issue for a couple months now. And I don't know why I haven't been ready to do an episode about this particular issue. It's not that it's a big issue or something. There's not a major epiphany that comes with it. But I purchased this off of eBay because it has Genie Francis on the cover. And this particular issue is from August 23rd to the 29th in 1980. So Genie Francis, for those of you who might not know, played Laura of Luke and Laura fame on General Hospital, also known as GH by those of us who are viewers. And in the late 70s, there was a very problematic storyline arc that would never fly today. I don't want to go into what it was because this is a sleep podcast and we're in our happy place. If you've watched GH, you'll know what I'm talking about. And if you don't know, it's okay. It was a soap opera. And they do bad things and then redeem people, basically. And it would take almost 20 years before the show would really address what happened in that storyline. For me, this issue represents a time of my life. So if it is late August in 1980, I likely had just arrived at college. I'm 18 years old, and I am going to Northern Illinois University in DeKalb, Illinois. And DeKalb is about 2 hours west of Chicago. And at the time, the 2 hours between Chicago and DeKalb, most of it was farmland and cornfields. That is not really the case anymore. You know, urban spread and all of that, suburban sprawl. I haven't been to DeKalb, I don't think, since 1982, so I don't really know. And at the time, the 2 hours felt really far away from home. Northern Illinois University, or NIU as we called it, was the school you went to if you weren't at the top of your class. Like if you were in the middle of the class, I was a B student, you could get into Northern. I wanted to study television production, but before you could even get to the TV classes, you had to take all the general ed, which I hated. I was a terrible student when it came to trying to study for things I didn't care about. And I lived on the 3rd floor at Stevenson South, and my roommate's name was Tanya. Moving to college was a little bit of a culture shock. It was the first time I ever met people who had never met a Jewish person. I grew up in Skokie, which in my childhood I think was 70% Jewish. So I had always grown up around Jewish people. Maybe not profoundly religious people, but culturally Jewish. So I remember having these conversations with people in our dorm rooms where they were curious about Judaism. And all I could think of was, how could you never have met a Jewish person? Because that was so far removed from my reality. I think that's what college does for us. It expands our horizon and introduces us to lots of different people. That would also be right around the time that I would meet my friend Jerry. And Jerry is still in my life. He is part of my soul family. And how I met him was, it was early in the semester, so we had just moved into the dorms. And they do fire drills, right, to make sure that everybody knows how to stay alive if there is a problem. And so we all came out of the dorms and were standing, whatever, in a field somewhere, or some parking lot, wherever we were. And kind of through the crowd, I saw this cute boy. In my mind, this is so interesting. It's similar to what I said in my head in the dream I just shared with you. I thought, he is the cutest boy I've ever seen in real life. Like, he's the cutest boy I've ever seen. But at the same moment, I saw, I'm going to call it the light around him. Back then, I didn't know that it was the light. But it was like the sea of people parted, and all I saw was him, and I knew he was going to be important in my life. I felt this connection with him. It wasn't an attraction. An attraction means I need to know you, right? There's an unknown between you, but a connection means it already exists. It already is. And so I saw him, and there was this like light around him, almost like out of the, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of people on the lawn, the parking lot, wherever we were in that moment. All I saw was him. And I knew that he was going to be my best friend. And I didn't know how that was going to happen. And I don't even remember how we met after that. Again, this isn't the kind of story with, and then I went up to him and we became best friends. I don't even remember how we came to know each other. But he absolutely became my best friend. And we were best friends, especially during the part of life, 18 through 21, where life is so angst-ridden. Yes, who am I? Why am I here? Like, emotions are so big. Everything is so dramatic. And he was my person. And then life goes on, and we stayed connected all of these years. And he has been there for me through most of the profound moments of my life. He has been there for me and with me. And I love him so much. So I'm so glad to share with you about him. He's been a part of my heart my whole life, even before I met him. And that moment, probably in August of 1980 when I met him, my heart was like, you're home. You're part of my home. You're part of my home crew, my home team. And he would be. And it's so lovely because we have stayed connected. He and his partner, John, came to my wedding with Wes. He's been there for so many beautiful moments of my life. So that's what was coming forward for me as I looked at this issue of TV Guide, was everything that happened in my life right at that time period when I went to college. And I met people I wouldn't ordinarily meet, and I felt like a duck out of water. And I had just met Jerry. And again, we didn't become best friends right away. I didn't quite understand the way I felt about him, because it wasn't, I don't know, to call it a crush doesn't sound right. It was this deep connection, but it takes time to reveal what that will be on the earth plane. So that's what's going on. I still don't have access to a VCR. I don't know. It sounds weird that I would say that right after I tell you I met one of my soul family. But, it's a sleep podcast. I'm now segueing into television. I don't have access to a VCR at school for sure. I don't think my parents have one yet. And I know that this is a huge deal because Luke and Laura are going to be getting married soon. And I remember that I had to run to the student union to watch the wedding episode. I also remember that I scheduled my classes around General Hospital. That's how hardcore I was. I would not take a 2 o'clock class. These days, no one would think about that because everything is available whenever you want to watch it. But back then, it was a big deal. So who knows what my life path would have been had I been willing to take a 2 o'clock class. But that was a deal breaker. Nothing could come between me and General Hospital. So let's get into it, shall we? And see what was airing on television in late August of 1980. I'm going to start off with an ad that's a bit of a time capsule because it's an ad from Sears about bedspreads. And does anyone use a bedspread anymore? Are they even a thing? I can't remember the last time I saw any kind of catalog or ad about bedspreads. But this says, tough cord, save $3 on the bedspread with muscle in Carnival of Colors, now only $10.99 twin size. And it has a full 5-year warranty. Should your tough cord bedspread wear out within 5 years from the date of purchase, return it for free placement or refund. And it's made of polyester and rayon. It needs no ironing. It's available in 10 solid colors and 5 coordinating plaids. My mom was a bedspread person, I will say. Shout out to my mom. I love you, Mom, in heaven. I love you. And I hated the bedspreads. Because to make a bed with a bedspread is different than just sort of pulling up the comforter and fluffing the pillows. But back in the day, you kept the bedspread on the bed so that the blankets and the sheets and the pillows would stay clean. So if you're using bedspreads, power to you. This is not a criticism of people who use bedspreads. It's just a flashback for me because bedspreads were part of my childhood and I haven't thought about them in years. Also, time capsule. There's a Kmart ad for film, developing of photos, and those photo albums with the cling sheets. Do you remember those? You would pull the plastic up and there was sort of like this sticky white cardboard and you'd put your photos in there and put the cling film back over them. How many of us have spent time trying to pry those photos, those precious photos out of these albums, and they would get kind of discolored around the photos. But back then we didn't know about all of this archival photos and stuff, and we would be decades away from digital photos. So this says Kmart gives you the whole picture. Picture quality, focal film at a price you can afford. Picture goof-proof photo finishing. Either you like your prints or the price of the print excluding processing charge is refunded. Picture knowing that you will get your prints on time. And now you can protect these pictures, at least for a decade or two before they turn different colors. With magnetic photo albums on sale at Kmart, the extra large pages accommodate up to 8-inch by 10-inch photographs. You get 12 mounting surfaces on 6 pages, and refills are available. They come in brown, beige, blue, and red, and they're only $2.77 each. And again, the newer generations will never know what it was like to have this mysterious roll of film and not know what was in it, and try to decide, should we spend money to get it developed or not? And then how many developed photographs are sitting in our garages? I have a lot of them. And I go through them every once in a while, and I think, at what point do I have permission to throw them out? And I don't know what life is going to be like 50 years from now. Is there going to be a joy in scrolling through Grandma or Grandpa's Facebook page at photos? Going through old boxes of photos has been such a rite of passage for the last 100 years. I wonder what will replace it. Now we come to a 2-page ad for the Chevy Citation. I think this would be a compact, it says a compact car. Look at how intuitive I am. It says that 30 bags of groceries fit inside. I don't know, if you're driving a compact, I don't know that you're buying 30 bags of groceries. Because it's a hatchback. Oh, I see. So to get the 30 bags in, it's a hatchback, and you can fold the back seat down. And they do admit you're probably not going to buy that many groceries at one time. Thank you. But it gives you a good picture of Citation's 41.4 cubic feet of cargo space. It has a 532-mile highway range and a 14-gallon fuel capacity. And I got out my little handy-dandy calculator, and that's 38 miles a gallon. That's really good. But that probably means you're not running an air conditioner. I don't know that cruise control was in this quality of car back then. It only needs 3/4 of a parking space, because back in 1980, parking spaces were reasonably sized. Now everything is a compact space. And it has beautiful exterior colors, the two-tone, right? Because who didn't love good wood paneling on your car back in the 80s? For sure. There are some TV Guide articles that I am going to skip over. One is about a reporter, a guy who, I guess, spends a week as a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader. I didn't read it. I didn't read the article. It didn't call to me. And something about medical shows that I skipped over. There is an ad for HBO, because HBO is starting to become a thing in the early 80s. And the movie that they're promoting is Moonraker. So that would be one of the James Bond movies with Roger Moore as James Bond. And it says here that they're showing movies like Hair, North Dallas 40, 10 with Bo Derek and Dudley Moore, The Main Event, that I seem to recall was a boxing movie with Barbara Streisand. Did I get that right? And Justice for All, and Norma Ray, which was a phenomenal movie. And they also have sports and other things. I don't think we had HBO at this point. My parents were not going to pay for it, because that was not a thing to spend discretionary income on for my parents back then. Like all good TV guides, we start with a Saturday morning. And again, if I am a freshman in college, I promise you I was not up and I was not watching television. I think in all likelihood we might have had a little 10-inch television in our room, or 12-inch black and white. And if it was the weekend, I likely was recovering from doing freshman in college kind of activities, which I will not go into. But let's just imagine I was watching television. What was on? Well, Dance Fever, right? That was certainly a staple of this time. But I'm going to skip right on over to prime time. Let's do it. So 240 Robert is on, which I don't remember at all, but it involves a very young, well, I don't mean very young, like he's 5. But it's probably an early in his career Mark Harmon. So, because, yeah, how old would Mark Harmon have been in 1980? I don't know. Should I go Google it and then come back and tell you? Hold on. Okay, I'm glad I checked. Mark Harmon was born in 1951, so he was 29 years old. So maybe not that young. I was thinking that he must have been 22 or 23. So, it does involve Mark Harmon, and his character's name is Thib. So, the deputies get stuck caring for lost twins while they search for two pickpockets who pose as doctors at the scenes of accidents. Thib is played by Mark Harmon, as we've already talked about. Trap is played by John Bennett Perry. Morgan is played by Joanna Cassidy. I don't know that I would have ever watched that show, but 18-year-old me didn't know about Mark Harmon then, and I would grow to have a crush on him during his St. Elsewhere years, where he played Bobby Caldwell. Thank you very much that I remembered that just now in the early morning. I'm impressed with my recall. Buck Rogers is airing. A 20th Century Earthling, played by Gary Coleman, recently released from suspended animation, is being held by kidnappers on a distant planet, and Buck was played by Jill Gerard. I don't think I ever saw that either. The Cubs are playing. I wouldn't have cared, but, at some point in my life I might have. And of course, Saturday night. Think Saturday night, 1980. We are looking at the Love Boat Fantasy Island doubleheader. So, for Love Boat, a husband, played by James Gregory, believes his dowdy wife, Jane Meadows Allen, is the object of every male passenger's desire. Second story is men are intimidated by Julie's intellectual friend, played by Shelley Hack. Story number 3, Vicky, Jill Whalen, and a passenger, Ronnie Scribner, discover a young stowaway, played by Tony Ramirez, bound for a reunion with his mother in Mexico. John Gabriel is on this, Jennifer Darling, Kevin Tighe, of course, from Emergency, with Johnny Gage and Roy DeSoto. It terrifies me what lives in my memory. All right, let's get on to Fantasy Island. A woman played by Joan Collins, right? So she's sort of in the Dynasty upswing of her career. I think Dynasty was happening already. I don't know, maybe not. I'm not going to look it up. I don't care that much. But a woman, Joan Collins, wants to be Cleopatra. A meek man played by Larry Linville, who of course was Frank on MASH, wants more control over people. Ooh, that sounds kind of nasty. And because it is Saturday, of course Saturday Night Live is on, and this is going to be a repeat. So in a show from April, the late character actor Strother Martin parodies the prison farm warden he played in Cool Hand Luke. And the repeats of Saturday Night Live were a big deal because most of us didn't have VCRs. And it wouldn't be the wee hours of Saturday morning without a good horror film, which I'm going to throw in here for my friend David. David, this one's for you. The Horrible Dr. Hitchcock. It's an Italian film from 1962. Gaslit London in an old mansion set the stage for this lurid tale of ghosts, murder, and sexual obsession. I've never heard of it, but it sounds like really good stuff to watch at 3:50 a.m. on a Saturday night. If I was 18 years old, so could be a thing. Okay, if it's Sunday morning, and I'm 18 years old, it does not exist for me. So we're just going to skip right through it. But if you do need to watch television, there are sports programs on, tennis. I guess I will talk a little bit about it. There is a Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis movie on, The Stooge. That just really sounds like the kind of thing you would have to watch on a Sunday because nothing else was on. Life is so much better now that we have dominion over what we watch, I tell you. There's horse racing, Hee Haw, Dance Fever, Wild Kingdom. Are your memories starting to come back to you now? Sunday night, I'm sure at my parents' house, 60 Minutes would be on. It was always on at my parents' house, for sure. Never missed it. And then we move on to sort of the family-friendly, right, Sunday night movies from Disney, and a new show called Those Amazing Animals. The late 70s and early 80s were big on these kind of reality shows like Real People and Amazing Animals. And this has Burgess Meredith, Jim Stafford, and Priscilla Presley as the hosts. And the opener has underwater photographers John and Valerie Taylor snapping pictures of dangerous sharks. So this is a precursor to Shark Week by a couple decades. A miniature horse that solves problems. Who doesn't like a good miniature horse? I love miniature horses. And dancing bees, which I wouldn't have cared about because I didn't like bees, even though, of course, we owe a lot to bees. One Day at a Time is airing, which I loved because I wanted to be best friends with Valerie Bertinelli. And in this episode, Anne and sports writer, played by David Spielberg, begin a promising romance, first of 2 parts. There's a 4-part series called Backstairs at the White House that is airing this week. And then we come to Sunday night movies, the final chapter, Walking Tall. I would not have watched that. I would have been watching Alice with Linda Lavin. So this is a repeat. It sounds like this had been a Christmas episode. So a Yule tale with a touch of O. Henry's The Gift of the Magi finds the girls pooling their meager resources to celebrate Christmas at the diner. Oh, All Creatures Great and Small, that would be the original version, is airing on PBS. Wes and I like that a lot. The Jeffersons is on. Best theme song ever. I love the theme song. Moving on up. And David, I think you're the one who turned me on to that as a theme song, so thank you very much. So the Jeffersons, of course played by Isabel Stanford and Sherman Hemsley, celebrate their 30th anniversary with an argument. And I don't know why I'm laughing, because that's every episode, right? And Louise sends George packing to a hotel. Trapper John M.D. is on, which I think we watched because there was nothing else on. So Gonzo, played by Gregory Harrison, who I thought was cute, attempts to establish a hotline for troubled people, while Trapper, played by Pernell Roberts, tries to prevent a woman from going blind. And it looks like that's going to wrap up our Sunday night programming. So let's look at Monday. So it looks like the talk shows are still a thing. So Phil Donahue has Household Hints columnist Heloise as the guest. John Davidson, I didn't know John Davidson had a talk show, but his co-host is Andy Gibb, that I may have watched that if I was around. And guests are Grant Goodeve and Barbie Benton. So Grant Goodeve played the oldest son on 8 is Enough, and Barbie Benton was known as a Playboy model who had been in a relationship with Hugh Hefner. And she was an actress. I don't mean to just talk about her from her Playboy years, but that's what she was known for. And you can always catch a good episode, a rerun of Bewitched, or watch the game show Password, Mary Tyler Moore. And we've got, let's see, I thought I saw Mike Douglas in here somewhere. Let me see if I can find him again. But in the meanwhile, there is Dinah and Friends, so Dinah Shore, of course. From Atlantic City, James Darren, Jimmy Walker, Johnny Dark, Paul Sorvino, and actor John Gabriel, who played Seneca on Ryan's Hope. I love that I remembered that. And I'm sure Mike Douglas is here somewhere. Dick Cavett has Diane Cannon. I often think of Diane Cannon because I loved the movie Heaven Can Wait. And she and Warren Beatty and Julie Christie and Charles Grodin, they were all wonderful. Oh, and Jack Warden were all phenomenal in that movie. Okay, I found Mike Douglas. I don't know why that was so important to me. Co-host is Eric Estrada, who of course played Ponch on Chips. And the guests are Dom DeLuise, Carol Burnett, Tony Orlando, with no mention of Dawn, and Stan Kahn. I bet that would have been a really good panel. Dom DeLuise and Carol Burnett would have been very funny together. And as I recall, Tony Orlando could be pretty funny as well. We also have Merv Griffin. The guests include Robert Goulet, actor-dancer Jean Anthony Ray, who I think was on Fame. I think I'm right about that. Wait, I'm going to go double check. Hold on. Okay, yes, let's hear it for my memory. He played Leroy on Fame. Oh, I loved him. He was such a good dancer, and I don't know. I loved him on Fame. So he was going to be on Merv Griffin. Ooh, an Air Supply. Okay, can we just take a moment and appreciate Air Supply? I'm all out of love. I'm so lost without you. How many of you remember that song? It was such a song of longing and sadness. Air Supply, way to go. And then, of course, in the afternoon, there are all kinds of syndicated programming. Everything from One Day at a Time, Get Smart, Batman, Bewitched, Mary Tyler Moore, Gilligan's Island. Like, this is, I don't know about you, this is how I spent my childhood, watching these shows. And if you are a soap person, of course, Young and the Restless, All My Children are airing. Those were ones that we probably still remember. Ryan's Hope, I loved Ryan's Hope. Days of Our Lives, As the World Turns, One Life to Live, Another World, General Hospital, of course, Guiding Light, Texas. I don't know how many of you remember the soap Texas, and Edge of Night. There's probably more in here, but this was when all three networks, CBS, NBC, and ABC, were airing soaps all afternoon. All right, and then early evening on Monday, you can watch The Muppet Show. Kermit doubts guest Andy Williams' friendship when Miss Piggy cons the singer into crooning Love Story in an effort to persuade the frog to give up on bachelorhood. I loved the Muppets. There's also a Neil Sedaka special. Andy Gibb and the Captain and Tennille join Neil and Dara Sedaka in an hour of musical entertainment showcasing Sedaka tunes. Highlights include Should Never Let You Go, You Never Done It Like That, and Bad Blood. I think, though, he also wrote Love Will Keep Us Together, right? I think so. Wait, I'll be back. I'm going to check. Wow, I must have a lot of energy as I record this. I have Googled 3 times. Not that it's hard to Google, but this is the 3rd time I have Googled in this episode. Yes, Love Will Keep Us Together, written by Neil Sedaka and Howard Greenfield. And I have a big story about Love Will Keep Us Together and how I sang it to Kevin Bacon's character in a movie. That's going to be its own episode. But I have a special relationship with that song. I know you're wanting to hear the rest of that story, right? But we're right at the end of this episode. I'm not going to squeeze it in. It's not a 2-minute story. It's a much better story. It is worthy of its own story time arc. So we'll return to it. We've got the rest of our lives together. We got plenty of time. I have more stories for you. Don't worry, I'm not running out. Okay, so Neil Sedaka. And That's Incredible is going to be airing. So again, these kinds of shows were in their heyday at this point. So they're going to be reporting on a skydiver who survived a jump through his chute when it didn't open, and the Winchester House in San Jose. The sitcom Flow, which of course was a spin-off from Alice, is airing. Little House on the Prairie, Laura, played by Melissa Gilbert, of course, throws herself into teaching sign language to a deaf friend, played by Albin Branton, a deaf youngster who made his acting debut in this episode. There's a documentary about the Dion quintuplets, which is a really sad story. They were the Dion quintuplets. They were 5 identical girls, quintuplets. They were the Wonder Babies of the 30s, and they were separated from their parents and basically put on display. There's a book I'm about to read about it, so it's interesting this is showing up, a really sad story. Also airing on Monday night, it's a weird pivot from the Dion quintuplets to WKRP in Cincinnati. I loved that show. I thought it was really funny. In this episode, Johnny, played of course by Howard Hessman, is offered a better paying job in California, so Carlson, played by Gordon Jump, devises a scheme to keep him in Cincinnati, and this is the first of 2 parts. I enjoyed that show a lot. Also showing is MASH, the instant chemistry that develops between a vivacious journalist and a happily married BJ, of course played by Mike Farrell, shows promise of turning the correspondent into... Okay, I had to stop reading that because I didn't understand what it said. So, the instant chemistry shows promise of turning the correspondent into a correspondent. I don't understand what that means. I do know that the journalist was played by Susan St. James, and as I recall, in the storyline, there was an attraction between the 2 of them, and BJ felt profoundly guilty because he was happily married. So, since I've watched endless hours of MASH and syndication, I remember that episode. Also, as we are flipping through the TV guide, there is the Columbia Record and Tape Club insert that was always in every TV guide, where you can get 13 cassettes for a penny. They're featuring the music of Neil Diamond, Billy Joel, Anne Murray, Journey, Grateful Dead, Blondie, so Blondie's on the scene at this point, of course, Air Supply, did I not just talk about them? The Eagles' Long Run album, which is fantastic. Christopher Cross, I loved him. Boz Scaggs, like this is the music of my teen years. James Taylor, Flag. I would discover James Taylor in college. The soundtrack of Grease, The Carpenters, Cheap Trick at Budokan. Who remembers that album? Oh, all of these are wonderful. Fleetwood Mac, Tusk. Oh, these are wonderful. Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell. Phenomenal album. Little River Band. Love them. Okay, I could spend all day here, but I'm going to try and wrap up Monday before the episode ends, so I'm going to go back to television. We have part 2 of the One Day at a Time episode. So guilt-ridden, Anne ponders whether to break off her relationship with Mark, played by David Spielberg. And then airing in the 9 o'clock hour is Lou Grant, a show that I loved, I still think is wonderful, and if it was on one of the streaming services, I likely would watch it. A brush fire disrupts the lives of many Trib employees and consequently affects the paper's coverage of it. All right, and then On The Tonight Show, the guest hostess is Joan Rivers, and Mariette Hartley, Bernadette Peters, and George Gobel are the guests. Mariette Hartley was always really funny. How many of you remember the commercials she did with James Gardner? I think they were for Polaroid. I loved their commercials together. Okay, so one little more TV thing to share with you that I just read about yesterday that I'm rather excited about. So, how many of you remember the show Moonlighting with Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd? It is coming to Hulu, at least here in the US. It will be airing or streaming. Nothing really airs on Hulu. It'll be streaming on Hulu starting in October. I have allowed my Hulu subscription to lapse, but I may go back just to watch Moonlighting. I don't know if it holds up all these years later, but I remember loving that show. And speaking of shows that are now available, I don't know if you loved Northern Exposure. Well, it's not available within a free streaming service. You can purchase the seasons now from Amazon Prime. So I purchased season 1. They had it on a special, so you could buy season 1, I think, for $10. I just said to Wes this morning, I would like to introduce you to Northern Exposure, so let's watch it. I have an Afghan to crochet, and I would love to crochet to Northern Exposure because I need a TV show while I'm crocheting. So I'll report back on my Northern Exposure viewing experience soon. So we're only through Monday. We have lots more content to get through on this issue, from this issue, which we will do soon. But in the meanwhile, my beautiful ones, I wish you, of course, the sweetest of dreams. I wish you love and grace and joy and goodness. So thank you for allowing me to spend this time with you and for allowing me to share my memories with you. I love you very much, and I'm grateful for you. Thank you.